Hi, my name's Stephanie, and thank you for joining us today. Our webinar, 5 Major Pitfalls in Service Catalog Projects and How to Avoid Them, is presented today by Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen Systems, and Jeff Benedict, our ITSM Practice Manager. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. Your phone lines are muted today, so if you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel. You can access this using the question mark icon at the very top right-hand corner of the WebEx toolbar. Please send your questions to all presenters. That way I can review the questions and get them assigned. Also, if you go to full screen mode, which you will find helpful when Jeff is doing his demo later on in the presentation, please use the double arrow. And those are located just above the right-hand corner of the slide that you're viewing now, so above the right area that says Evergreen, you'll see double arrows. If you click on those, you'll go to full screen mode. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen Systems. Don?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first webinar of 2016. Happy New Year. I'm Don Casson, CEO of Evergreen, and with me is my normal co-host, Jeff Benedict, who heads up our ITSM practice as well as our innovation efforts. If you're new to our series, well, welcome, and thanks for joining us. If you're a past attendee, thanks for coming again. Our goal is always to share valuable information and insights you can use in your planning and activities right now. So here's our agenda. After a very little bit about Evergreen, we'll dive into our topic. After that, as always, we'll briefly demonstrate some of the concepts we discussed in our always evolving view of very advanced self-service catalog and portal experience, which happens to be built on ServiceNow. Then we'll answer questions if you have any. Evergreen is a US-based consulting firm, and we've worked with hundreds of mid-market, Fortune 1000 companies and public sector organizations to help them improve their IT service management execution. We're a full lifecycle firm. We have both process and technology consulting in one company. Our customers, in effect, don't have to be the systems integrator. We think that allows them to focus their full energy on the problem at hand. We are one of the top 2 US ServiceNow non-Big 5 partners and have over a decade of domain experience in every area of the ServiceNow portfolio. But, and I always say this, we view all of this from a perspective we call customer-centric service management. At Evergreen, we think conventional ITSM wisdom is wrong. ITSM has been done the same old way for the past decade. We do incident, problem, change, little knowledge, and at the end of it, we may be running a little bit better, but so what? What about the customer? Are we making a difference for them? Or are we waiting to phase 2, 3, or never to think about them? This old model is broken. Wherever we are, we need to start with the customer right now. If we do, we may be surprised to find that our customer sees little value in what we're focusing on and values things we may not even be thinking of. We can't know if we don't ask them. So we start with the customer, and it changes what we do. We create a lot of tools in our consulting work. Over the past couple of webinars, we began offering some guides that we use every day, specifically in customer-centric service catalog work in this front-end area that we focus on. Our Service Catalog Definitions Dictionary, our Service Taxonomy Use Guide, and our Service Catalog Governance Best Practices Guide. If any of these might be of interest to you, at the end I'll tell you how you can get a copy. So here's something brand new this week. We're announcing Evergreen Ready, and about half of the attendees on our webinars actually are not ServiceNow customers, have other platforms, and some of those attendees aren't necessarily happy with where they are. So for years, our customers in the mid-market and enterprise have been asking us for an out-of-the-box, complete, ITIL best practices-based solution, already finished, pre-built. So we finally built it. Evergreen Ready is complete incident, change, problem knowledge, and self-service catalog and portal ready to use. And it's not just technology, but complete, as-built policy, process, and technology, including the RACI charts, the workflows, so you can actually run it successfully. It can be operational in 2 to 3 weeks with over 750 best practices improvements to ServiceNow out of the box. If you're new to ServiceNow or an existing customer, as I said, thinking about a partial or a full reimplementation, it might be for you. Best of all, it is very affordable, priced in the mid-50s. So what is 2016 the year of? We think it is the year of all these things. We believe it will be a year of dramatic acceleration. There's a great deal of interest today in service catalogs and customer-centric activity. CEOs are asking for an Amazon-like employee experience of IT, which is a beautiful, complete, self-service experience end-to-end. The DevOps real-time cloud-fueled revolution is coming to all of us. Our companies simply won't be competitive if we don't respond. IT is being asked to help shared services like HR, contracts, and facilities in the Amazon-like experience. Last, time is of the essence for IT as innovation. Unless you are a local pizza parlor, there's a garage startup built on Amazon AWS with a better, faster global infrastructure than you have from day one. And they are looking to uninvent your business, like Amazon has to retail and compute, Uber to taxis, and Google Maps to navigation. If you have struggled to link your service catalog and customer-facing initiatives with the strategy of the business, perhaps this simple logic will help you explain it better. Business strategy is comprised of plans and people. Of the two, the people are probably more important since they are the ones who actually create and execute the plans. Supporting the people and plans is corporate capability, which to a great degree is provided by empowering technologies. What provides the empowering technology? IT. Notice the green arrows. There is a virtuous circle between the people and IT, with the service catalog and portal providing the customer-centric linkage. As this circle improves and gets faster and faster, we are better and more rapidly empowering our people, which enables them to exercise their highest potential to create and execute. Unleashing the potential power of our employees is what creates and drives the business strategy. I think it's pretty simple and pretty logical. The first of our 5 pitfalls is what we call clearly wrong motives. Why are we building a service catalog? If its primary goal is to offload IT work, it will probably fail because it will be done in a rush with a thin, pretty veneer over a poor experience. This is where services that are 2-page PDFs where they call us or email us at the bottom come from. Predictably, customers will reject it because it's bad and more trouble than just calling you. Our experience tells us that 80% of you who have tried this know what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, this is actually worse than doing nothing at all. Customers become extremely angry when you raise expectations and fail to meet them. Avoiding wrong motives means building from the customer in rather than IT out, even if one of your key goals is to offload IT work. Nothing wrong with that. It can't happen unless the customers use the solution, though. Although it is easiest to put a thin cosmetic veneer on an overall ugly experience, it is a waste of your money. Build deep and wide enough for consistent customer experience. If customers like it and use it, then self-service works, and IT's workload goes down. Give them what they want to get what we need. Building ugly. We're in IT operations, and traditionally, we don't have a lot of strength in building great user experiences. Still, because we're persistent and we can tackle anything, we might push ahead due to urgency, ego, and not knowing what we don't know. Unfortunately, the outcome is customer rejection. This kind of an experience gets customers confused, they get lost, and they see it as a waste of time. A beautiful self-service experience end-to-end is what the customer is after. You can adopt the 5 user experience design principles that guide everything we do in customer-centric ITSM. They work together as a set to challenge you and help you refine and balance your outcomes from start to finish. We have a lot of material supporting these 5 things. If you want to talk about it further, there's a number of webinars we've done in our archives that also talk about how these 5 elements work together. And I truly, highly recommend thinking about this. This is what we used to build what we've built. It is also useful to have some reference sites that you admire as kind of guiding lights. For example, when we came up with these 5 design principles, it was after studying sites we admired, like Apple, Google, Amazon, Airbnb. That's how we came up with them. The benefits here are actually very cool. This type of thing truly begins to change the way the customer interacts with IT and gives you the opportunity to lead their decisions down the path you want them to follow. So you actually can change your role from reactive to proactive. It starts to change IT itself. Like a lot of pitfalls, this one lies in the natural tendency we have in IT, our built-in sense of urgency to start doing something as fast as possible, and once we get started, to do a whole bunch of it with as many people as we can possibly drag into it. It also is rooted in our seemingly undying belief that there is always a quick and easy solution. Now that's not bad, except we often make that call before we've invested any time to understand the problem and therefore what a solution might actually involve. So the outcome is we build what we call 1,000 rifle shots, a whole bunch of individual services by a lot of different people that have nothing in common and are not organized in any fashion. So the customer experiences no consistency in look and feel or use, and again gets confused and angry. Imagine if every Amazon department had a unique checkout process. You wouldn't use it. Avoiding this trap means being premeditated in understanding the problem and how you might solve it. Creating a strategy and a roadmap is a really good way to frame the problem and the potential solutions. We just happen to have one, very complete with a whole lot more included, that takes 2 weeks and is only $17,500. Further, we unconditionally guarantee your complete satisfaction with it. That's how important it is to plan effectively. A good strategy and roadmap has a ton of benefits. It gives you a common language, gets your entire team on the same page with clear planned outcomes. Pitfall number 4 is about doing less rather than more. We in IT have a natural tendency to over-engineer solutions and to try to solve 100% of a problem in our first effort. The impact from this over-engineering is to build something good enough and then ruin it by overdoing it. Our overly complex solution loses simplicity and the customer while delivering very little incremental value. Customer-centric solutions should be engineered to initially provide basic, decent functionality. That's it. And then curated through interaction with the customers, like an arrow curving into a target over time. This is how the best solutions evolve. To facilitate rigorous ranking of requirements and design trade-offs, it's essential to time box the effort for the first version and to hold to the schedule. That compression of time forces those trade-off and design decisions as it should. Further, it's critical to set the customer's expectations to align with this, so they understand that the solution is meant to evolve with their feedback, and the first version won't be complete or perfect. Benefits from this include a lot less wasted effort, better alignment and interaction with customers, and continuous improvement. Pitfall number 5 is a tough one for most IT organizations. IT is complex and difficult enough as it is, and customers don't understand how hard it is to do what we're already doing. And since it's so hard with so many moving pieces, we really don't want to be held accountable for delivery times and service quality metrics as they're hard to meet. So we kind of make it hard for customers to give us feedback, and we don't make it very visible. Problem is, the customers don't care. All that is our problem, especially if we don't communicate with them. We actually waste a lot of time and energy because we aren't getting the feedback we need. Here's the good news. The customers already know what they think of IT, from the executive down to the staff level. They already talk about the quality of IT service. We're the only ones who don't know what they think. It's pretty funny, huh? So let's go public with it. It doesn't matter so much what the score is, but that we're working on it. People can be very patient as long as we're honest and working to improve. It also gives you a source of new ideas and lets you know areas that need to be addressed right away. It is powerful for improving quality quickly and getting the whole team, this is a really important point, getting the whole team that helps you deliver a given service on board and understanding their position in it. This is what I call a bonus pitfall, one more than the 5 promised. The biggest possible pitfall is thinking that this is just something IT will do, like anything else we do. And the reality is, it is something that IT will become rather than do. Service catalogs are about delivering services, and customers want a great customer experience, which is an enjoyable, clear interaction that meets their expectations for quality and delivery from start to finish. If we don't align against that, we won't be successful. So what we really have to do is embrace the change. A legitimate service catalog, and there's a good reason, there's a good basis for wanting to do that. A legitimate service catalog is often the catalyst that gets IT thinking and acting differently, right? Services require end-to-end execution against delivery and quality expectations that we publish to the customer. Someone has to own that outcome, so a service requires a service owner. That service owner quickly focuses on customer outcomes and getting the IT team across the silos of IT, and specifically who don't report to her, to help her meet the delivery goals. And everyone begins to see that there's a customer out there and what their role is in making them happy. So becoming customer-centric ends up changing IT more than anything, providing a powerful force to move from silos to services and services to service broker. As usual, I have a lot of content I can choose from when I prepare one of these webinars, and you know, it tends to expand the more research I do. But I did promise 5 key benefit areas for service catalogs, and so I wanted to sort of get 5 highlights here that may be of value to you. Self-service does offload IT work, and if it's properly built, customers are happier too. Since the interaction is essentially instantaneous, it speeds up service delivery. Self-service does something else. It opens the door to customer choice and the ability for IT to guide the customer behavior down the preferred fewer number of paths. And this is kind of where the real magic begins. Price and delivery times are the 2 big levers IT has to affect customer consumption behavior. Happy Mealing is the next level in steering customer choice by bundling a few complete solutions that meet 70 to 80% of the most common needs and are easier for both the customer and IT. This is exactly what McDonald's has done forever, to make it easier for the customer to choose and make it easier and faster for the McDonald's employees to deliver. As touched on already, something as simple as setting and meeting customer expectations, that simple, works to begin transforming IT. It drives efficiency, agility, speed, and quality. And finally, a true commitment to customer-centric service management, starting with the customer first always, is the most powerful lever, and I don't know of another one, for evolving IT into the modern organization it needs to be today. Well, that's all I've got to present today. Now let's shift gears, and Jeff will take over here and demonstrate some of these concepts in action.
Thanks, Don. And let me share my screen here. All right, there we go. Well, thanks, Don. Thanks, Stephanie. So I'm going to start kind of where I oftentimes start. I'm going to start in our kind of self-service portal. This is ServiceNow's content management system. And again, this is where customers or consumers can go to get information about our services. They can submit service requests, and then of course they can track those service requests. I also like to, call out that, this is also a great place where we can start to push and broadcast alerts to our consumers, push announcements, or kind of drive those kind of happy meals, as Don indicated, towards our end users. One thing I want to mention too is, we obviously see value now. More and more people are using mobile devices to interact with IT, and that becomes, in some cases, you might have initiatives for mobile first. So the site should be, and in this case is, responsive to the different devices and widths of those devices. So you'll see, common behaviors and actions of open and close of the navigator, as well as wiring to swipe events to be able to provide that kind of mobile experience that our consumers are expecting. Don mentioned, let me do a search here. Do a search for Salesforce.com. Don mentioned kind of simplifying and automating the actions for a customer. And this is where I kind of want to start in terms of leveraging the ServiceNow platform to drive value through service automation, and then also utilizing this portal as a front door for our consumers to interact with those service automations. So to kind of start one of the use cases, I'm going to start at, this is our service brochure or service tombstone page for our Salesforce.com service. Again, this is where we're providing some of that transparency of what the service is, what's in scope, what's out of scope, what, if any, offerings and commitments and costs might be involved with this service, health and status information, right, as well as those ratings and feedback and qualitative information about our service. Now, one thing that you'll see at the top is there's an ability to request this service, which will take me kind of to the shopping or ordering aspect of the portal. And I can go either direction. I can either start from request and access and look at information about the service, or in the case of us before, starting at the service information and requesting things in context to that. But let me go ahead and request new access. Let's say I need to work with customers, and I'll place my order. And what you'll see as I get started with a couple other workflows, that this one kind of goes a slightly different route than some other requests that we submit through the portal. And this one drops me into a page where I have kind of a timeline view of activities. And the reason for this is that the actual workflow behind this service request, it does not involve any human-based tasks. It's all fully automated. And the only case where there's actual humans involved is if it encounters errors or issues with its automation activities. So as a consumer, I can obviously kind of submit my request, track the status of this, and it's kind of leaving me here because it's going to auto-refresh as it progresses through the stages. Just to show you quickly what it looks like behind the curtain, there are activities to provision a new account for me in Salesforce.com, update Active Directory for additional rights and roles, do some validation activities, and then deliver my account information. And I will mention, too, there's a sub-workflow here, which is really kind of our service using another enabling service, in this case our identity management service, as our kind of engine for provisioning new accounts. But as I look at this, now it shows me status of close complete. I can see all my details of what it performed on my behalf. I can see it created a new account for me with the appropriate permissions, as well as gave me a link here to start using this particular service. So if I click here, it's actually routing me through our identity management system and into Salesforce.com as a new consumer. So obviously this is a use case where as a consumer, I can easily, quickly get access to the tools I need without having to interact with anybody other than through a portal in the system. One thing I want to mention here too is Don mentioned IT being more of a service broker in addition to a service provider. And I want to call out that in this, in this use case, if this workflow involved another vendor to fulfill the activity or another system where we needed access, we see this portal as a good place where you could provide either that external content embedded or use links out to the other system so the consumer can have kind of a single place to go for that service fulfillment. One thing I want to highlight out here, on the other side of that new access request is the service owner. And I just toggled into this new the service owner's kind of view in the portal. And one of the things that the service owner got was a notice up here that there's a new subscriber, right? So I can, as a service owner, I can see, oh, I have a new person who's part of my, making use of my service. I can kind of manage to those expectations through my service dashboard, which I'll show you here quickly, which shows me some notices and notifications relevant to my particular service, such as a new outage that came in. I can track to my various metrics and commitments that I've made, as well as manage some of the feedback and information that I'm getting back from my, my subscribers. And ultimately with the goal of meeting my customer expectations. All right, so Next area I want to go, so another kind of service automation I want to just kind of hit on is the requesting and ordering of and distributing of software. And I'm kind of going a different route. Instead of going to a search or through the service catalog, I'm kind of looking for, I need help in regards to software. There's a topic out here that says my issues pertaining to software. I'm going to say yes. My choices are a new software or a specific software error. I actually want new software in this situation, which is then going to take me to a list of software that I can request through this kind of shopping experience. I'm going to filter this further and get to one software title that I'm looking to request an order. Now, a couple things I want to highlight on here. First of all, you'll see an area for payment method, and the purpose for this is actual licensable software that carries a cost, and the way we are getting basically kind of that cost transparency back to the user and getting kind of chargeback or accounting for this particular software is either through a purchase order, which would allow me to put in a purchase order number, or chargeback. The other thing we're doing on this page to verify kind of the software does indeed work on this person's machine is we're disclosing here's some of the specifications of this particular software and asking that they kind of certify that this will indeed work on their machine. And you notice I can choose multiple quantities if I wanted multiples. I could also select this and request this for other people if that were part of my requirements. Another thing I can do is I can actually spread this across multiple cost centers. So in this case, I'm going to spread this across 2 different cost centers. I'm going to say maybe a 40-60 split. And if I were to try to order this right now, one of the things that it's actually going to do is it's going to reach into our financial system and validate this cost center information and spit back any messages that we get back from that system, which in this case is coming back and saying one of our cost centers has actually been deactivated and has been replaced by a newer cost center. So just to kind of take this a step further, I can replace this, and if I wanted to kind of spread my cost to something that doesn't equate to 100%, you'll notice it does validate that as well. So I'm going to leave that at 60%. The next area I wanted to kind of hit on down here is see the bottom of distribution method, and this is unique to the software product itself as to how can it be distributed. In this case, there are 2 options. I can either push it through a push software, in our case is SCCM, or I could also provide this software through a download. Now, the difference, each software package might have different ways of being distributed. And one of the things that's happening here is that because my computer is managed by SCCM and the software is available through SCCM, it's suggesting that that be the mode in which I get this particular software. That would be the best to serve my needs and the quickest way for me to get that software. So I think I've got everything I need. I'm going to click order now. It'll now revalidate my cost center information, which it now passes the test. I'll say, here's my reason. I'll place my order. And I'll give it a second here. And then now, instead of dropping into that kind of workflow timeline view, I'm dropped into my status page where I can track the progress of this particular request. And the reason for this is not one that is anticipating being delivered immediately, but rather has some activities such as authorizations and approvals that have to take place in order for this particular software request to be completed. Let me just quickly show you the workflow on this one and the different steps that go into it. I guess I got to type the right word. I'm going to go to my request that we just submitted. Here's the item for the software, the different information that was input. And if I show you the workflow, I'll just talk you through this real quickly. So a couple things worth noting on this workflow is that it's modularized in the sense that based off of the payment method, in our case, chargeback versus purchase order, there are different sub-workflows that are initiated, such as there's different approvals and authorizations, or kind of approval authorization routes if it were purchase order versus chargeback. In the case of chargeback, we're getting the cost center managers to approve that. And then the same thing occurs down here on distribution based off of the distribution method selected, in our case, software push. It's going to have a separate workflow depending on whether it's software push versus download versus deliver in person or something of those nature. So I'm going to go ahead and approve this just to show you kind of its progression. And if I refresh this workflow, so now it's completed the authorization step. Notice there's a step here where it's checking for whether we have license inventory, whether we have available licenses for this software. If we didn't, then there's a task that's kicked out to address the license shortage. But if we're okay on licenses and inventory, then it proceeds to the distribution. And then that's where it pushes to software, where it actually pushes that software package to my kind of managed workstation. And then on the back end of this, there's some management and accounting. And this is where we get to what we consider balanced design, is that we're serving the customer's needs by getting them software quickly and their needs, but we're also addressing our management needs by registering the billable transactions to charge them back, as well as a software entitlement record to manage that they actually are indeed appropriately licensed for this software and should have rights to use that particular software. So just to kind of complete the picture, I'll show you quickly what the, so these are the billing entries that are recorded. Again, it's spread out to our different cost centers, 60%, 40%. The state of processed is notable in the sense that this is telling me that it actually connected to our financial system and pushed this transaction to it, and that's what this cross-reference is. And then the last thing that was registered as well, as I mentioned, was an entitlement. So a new entitlement was registered, and you'll see that here for me, which is me to the software, so that if I were to, if there were any question about whether or not I'm entitled to use that software, this is our system of record for that purpose. All right, so that's that use case. So in addition to kind of the service automations bringing value to our customers, we obviously believe the self-service experience should also empower our customers, kind of answer their own questions, solve their own problems. And there's some different techniques we use on this page to kind of push relevant knowledge or forum posts to a customer based off of their problems, as well as kind of steering them towards experts that can help them. And let me show you what I mean. So if I choose email and I choose access issue, a couple things change on the page. One is I'm pushed some knowledge articles to the user to kind of steer them towards self-solving the issue. I've also been pushed to them kind of some information about here's who you can contact to get that one-on-one assistance pertaining to email access issues. And I could start a chat session, right, using ServiceNow's chat. I could schedule an appointment. Maybe I want to dig into some of these knowledge articles, and maybe this is where I would look to try to solve my own problems. And then further, if those don't work, then obviously I would kind of take a step further and say, you know, can I get email on iPad as an example? Change this to emails. And one of the things you'll see here is based off the information I put in, it actually dug deeper in and said, well, let me go look further in the knowledge base. Let me look in our case, this live feed community aspect of ServiceNow and show various articles or information that might be relevant to help that user. I can say, yes, this is not helpful, or yes, this is helpful. I could even go the route of posting this to the help forum to get that kind of community feedback and maybe peer help to solve that particular problem. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and submit it further to our service desk for assistance. And again, where I'm dropped is in my status page where I can track the progress of my various types of requests, incidents, things that are awaiting my approval, and so forth. And one of the other options I have here as a consumer is I can use this as a way to track status, but I can also use this as a way to interact with my fulfillment or fulfillers, and I can, you know, provide some additional details, you know, something like really need to get this fixed before my 3 p.m. meeting, something like that, right, to kind of push this along. And then on the other end of this, you know, is a help desk agent. I'll just impersonate a help desk agent. right, that's looking at maybe being notified and looking at new incidents that are submitted. In this case, the one that I just submitted, taking ownership of those, putting their name on here, something of that nature. I'm working on this. And then we start kind of a dialogue back and forth, and this page will auto refresh, and I'll see that, oh, Beth is working on this, and this is who it's assigned to and who's working on it. And then lastly, Beth will come in and put a resolution in place, something like that. Right, resolve the issue. And if I come over here, you'll notice it's now moved to a resolve status with my fix. And it's pushing some actions for me to provide kind of a dialogue back and forth to my fulfillers. Is this resolved? Is it not resolved? If I said no, then I provide some additional feedback and it'll move it back to work in progress. If I say yes, then you'll see it moves it to close and that particular issue is completed. One last point I want to hit on the Get Help page, if I went a different route, so in this case I went to like our shared services area for an HR question, maybe I have a question around policy, you'll notice I get a different form presented to me pertaining to HR, also pushing different, here's some policies you might be asking about or interested about, here's where you can go for that. A different expert to help me work through my policy questions, and maybe in this case, maybe I would rather kind of have an appointment and schedule some time with an expert to get that one-on-one consultation. So from here, I can kind of pick some dates. I can look for Friday. Maybe I want to do Saturday. Oh, they don't work on Saturday. So I guess Friday it is. I'll pick this window and then submit this. And then where this will take me is probably somewhat expected. I'm back on my status page to kind of track my appointment. And then behind the curtain here is invites are sent out. The HR expert is, would coordinate with me to have this one-on-one consultation, and then we would obviously complete and close this request out once that appointment is fulfilled. One last kind of use case I want to hit on before kind of calling it done on my demo today is Don talked about moving from silos to services, and one of them I want to kind of show as an example is employee onboarding, which takes various IT components such as network storage and application access, but also aggregates other cross-functional department services that the HR provides and facilities into one overall service and not a shotgun of different activities. And the way I get to that one is I do in my service catalog, I do have an HR service catalog service view, and so I can look at information about employee onboarding here, right? And I could also initiate a new onboarding request, which is then going to ask me for various details about who my employee is, name, start date, employment type, manager position. And a couple ones I want to highlight as far as inputs here. Our position is, first of all, the position is going to drive the different types of activities that are performed, what software, what equipment, what access is going to be delivered, is going to likely be driven by the department and position information. And the last one on here is location. If this is a location employee or a remote employee, then we may have variable or different types of activities performed based off of that location type. To give you an example of that, let me move this out of here. I'll just show you a completed workflow. So this is it's a pretty busy picture, but this is a completed workflow for an onboarding. And I just wanted to highlight a couple things in here. One is there's an if condition in here that drives if we have an office location, then there's a variety of tasks that need to be completed to help set up that office. If they're a contractor versus an employee, then we might have conditional steps around equipment, and then ultimately in procuring the different types of activities or different types of equipment based off of that position or type of employee that is being hired. The other thing I wanted to highlight or just show quickly on here is the actual record that's submitted for onboarding looks like this, in that here's our new employee, we get information about the new employee, but there are multiple types of activities performed. There's tasks specific for HR for doing the training, background checks, setting up payroll, as well as tasks to onboard from an IT perspective, the activities for individuals. So it's one cohesive service that's being tied together versus it being distributed through different silos or different departments, but just delivered as one central service, initiated through one request through the portal, and kind of provides what a customer would expect, a single view in terms of how that service is delivered versus a multiple different tasks and activities to manage. So that completes what I hope to show you today. I hope this was helpful in seeing how the portal, how the service catalog, and all these solutions can tie together to make a better customer experience and a better solution for both IT and our customers.
Thank you, Jeff. The one thing I could point out that's interesting, the example of the software store, or it could be your corporate software hardware application store, whatever it is that you essentially want to sell in some fashion to your customers. I mean, properly articulated, it's a lights out function. We have clients that they only get involved in it if something breaks, right? Other than that, it runs completely unattended. And that's the power of kind of getting the customer through self-service to make the choices you need and then automating the execution of the choices on the back end. We call that balanced design. So anyhow, do I have the lead here, or do you, Jeff? There we go.
I do.
Thank you. So here are some possible next steps. This slide's starting to get crowded. I have to admit, I think I'm going to have to cut a couple back. But if you're interested in the things that Jeff demoed today, you can play with this portal. It's available, fully functioning self-service demo from our website. It's fun and it's easy to use. You can't break it. At least no one has yet. Over 600 have signed up for it to date, and you get your own login and you can be using it in 5 minutes. And if nothing else, it might give you some ideas, right, about what you'd like to do or wouldn't do. Beyond that, perhaps you're considering a broader service catalog initiative, but you aren't sure where to start. We do have a one-day private workshop, service catalog workshop that we run on your site for up to 15 attendees. It's just under $4,000, including the travel. It educates your team, creates a common language and direction, and it can save truly months of effort in communication, consensus building, and getting your program moving faster. We also guarantee it, money back. If you'd like a copy of one of those definitions documents I mentioned, or the guides, just reply via email and we'll be in touch to get it to you. Last, feel free to look into Evergreen Ready if that seems like a fit for you, because it really is complete and out of the box, which is, we've had fun getting it to that point, by the way. So let's open it up to a few questions if we have any.
Don, we do, and Jeff, I don't know if this is possible, but I have a question. Hold on, it's scrolling. I have a question. Can Jeff show the status that the customer sees for the employee onboarding? I don't know if that's something for you, easy for you to access right now. And you've got a pop-up window also, Jeff, that's partially blocking our view of your desktop. Right? Thank you, desktop.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have any ones out here that I can see that are tied to me, but let me see if I can find something. So this would be, type would be an HR case, onboarding request for Bob employees. This is one that hasn't gone very far. I think my view details is going to take me to a pretty limited view of my actual request at this point, but that's kind of where I would go to see it. And obviously, more details could be pushed to the user through status updates that would show up here in kind of the timeline view of activities.
Maybe we're waffling on bringing him on board.
I think so. I've got kind of a fishy name, Bob Employee.
Thanks, Jeff. Jeff, while I've got your attention, I've got a couple other ones for you. What identity management providers do you integrate with? For instance, do you integrate with Okta?
Yeah, so actually in the demo, that was the tool that we were integrated with, was Okta. That's probably the one we've seen the most. Obviously, have a partnership with ServiceNow, so they have hooks and ties with ServiceNow through Okta, but I know there are others out there that we've encountered in the past. And you know, that have APIs that could be hooked into for initiating new provisioning requests. And in some cases, it may be through Active Directory. I know even Okta, that's an option too. Of you could integrate from ServiceNow into Active Directory to add a user to a group. and Okta could see that group membership from Active Directory as a trigger to drive provisioning of access to the different applications that may be tied to that group definition, if that makes sense.
Great, thanks. Also, Jeff, in this demo, how are you handling license management? How is that data being delivered to the decision matrix?
So license data in terms of the software request, I'm assuming. So really what we had in our scenario, and certainly it could be done differently in terms of how you want to manage the workflow, but in the scenario that I covered for ordering a new software, is there was no burden pushed to the consumer of having to ensure that we had a license available to that particular software, but rather that was on the back end, in the sense that after I submitted my request, there were checks into the workflow as to whether or not there was a deficiency in licenses, and if there is, then a replenishment kind of task would have to take place. So there's that, and then there, as far as the purchase order and the chargeback, that would be, financial justification to order or buy software licenses, probably in a different system to account for, having an actual license for that particular software.
We also have the option to have authorization approvals depending upon the spend level. There's a variety of different ways you can do it.
Yeah, and ServiceNow has, say that there's reconciliation aspects to this too, in terms of at the output of our purchase process, there was an entitlement software license, but there would also be a discovery activity to read my computer machine to see if that software is actually installed, and that would be kind of the comparison of I have an entitlement, but am I also using that particular software, would be kind of the reconciliation activity of what do you own versus what are you actually using or installed.
Okay, great. Don, a couple questions for you. It says, Don, did you say that the best practices guides are specifically related to service catalog and portal-focused activities? Yes, I did, and it's probably worth emphasizing again really quickly. They're not for ITSM in general, but they are very specific. We actually refined and extended the ITIL definition set around services and service catalog and service delivery functions where it was lacking. We created the service taxonomy approach and definition set because it just didn't exist, and we produced a governance guide specifically targeted at this area. And so, yeah, these are very specific to this challenge here, this particular problem area. Great. And Don, another one for you. You said there is more included in your 2-week roadmap engagement than just the roadmap. Can you elaborate?
Okay. Yeah. It also includes sort of the impact and the interaction on the other ITIL disciplines in place. Incident, change, knowledge, problem, high-level baselining of the current state, several deep dive, it's actually quite a bit of stuff, several deep dive hands-on workshops on learning to use a good service design model, which we provide, and then you get to keep. Several workshops to explain and build your first working model of a service taxonomy, kind of that V1, and a fully licensed copy of our mind map service taxonomy application, which is yours as well, so you can continue to extend that taxonomy, potential future state, working portal sandbox in ServiceNow, kind of with this look and feel at a high level, and an executive briefing of findings, recommendations, the roadmap itself, and a phase 1 scope and costing recommendations. All that occurs within a 2-week period.
Thanks, Don. Sorry, folks, bear with me. Don and I are usually in the same room, and he's in Florida and Jeff's in Colorado, and I'm scrolling through your questions here. So we are definitely a dispersed workforce today. Let's see. Jeff, this is probably for you. What other workflows were shown in today's demo that are not included in the Evergreen Ready product?
So, certainly, like I said, we've got a lot of workflows that we've worked on in the past that, when you engage us to provide services to help you with a service catalog activity and journey, we'll obviously borrow from our various workflows that we've created in the past. We've done stuff with provisioning, or as far as service automations go, we've certainly seen password reset. We've seen provisioning of access, as I kind of showed in the demo. The software store stuff we've done a few times, as well as VMware provisioning, cloud provisioning through other tools, as well as kind of your standard IT-based requests for telephones, hardware product, and other, kind of service delivery kind of activities. So, I mean, in general, we will bring our full catalog of what we've built in the past to an engagement, and obviously use it where it makes sense.
Yeah, so you have the right to all of it. Basically, is what it comes down to, and you may not get all of it operational in a 2-week period, but it's all there.
And Don, you mentioned the 2-week period. I did have a question about what is the time frame for implementing Evergreen Ready?
Well, and that's a good question. It is between 2 and 3 weeks, and the key is it's not traditional implementation. It is pre-built, it's prescriptive, it's already done. So we spend that time going through the configuration options. How does it configure for your business? How does it fit? And then, how do you use it? Right, so it truly is and it can be applied as it is built, out of the box best practices. And I mean, if you want to change it, you can do that too. And we can write a statement of work to change it. But that time is to basically prescriptively say, here it is, and it can work. Let's apply it for you. So and we've been asked this for many, many years to really get it right. And the reason we haven't finished it until now is I wanted, not just me, but all of us, we wanted the policy, the process, and the technology fully integrated, right? And the litmus test is there, can we produce as-built documentation for those things in an integrated fashion right from the start? And it's all in a database, a common database, so yes, we can, right? And that was the true test in my mind, in addition to all the enhancements that are there.
Okay, great, thanks, Don. Jeff, for you, in regards to being a service broker, is it possible to include external content such as YouTube videos or SharePoint documents through the portal?
Yeah, I mean, so in the demo, one of the things that was kind of shown was as I ran a search, or as I showed knowledge content as I was going through the Get Help topics, that actual content was being sourced from ServiceNow data tables. But, I guess a couple different options. Either the ServiceNow data itself could be imported from another system, such as SharePoint, or the other route we could go would be more of a federated web service call, where through the portal we're issuing, to display content from another system, whether that be SharePoint or YouTube. And I would say it could also be said for, there was a part of the demo today where I was kind of highlighting, kind of pulling back live feed information to help that Get Help process as well. That could certainly be an integration out to, we use Slack, other people might use that too, or Yammer or Jive or some other collaborative tool out there.
Okay, Jeff, and we've had a question like this before in the past as far as needing some clarification on the demo, kind of what's ours, what's Evergreen's, and what's ServiceNow. So the question I have today is curious what is driving the software store in the demo. Is this part of the Evergreen offering or an example of another integration?
I mean, I think I'd probably answer this more it's an example of another integration, and I included it in today's demo to hit on the points that Don mentioned, which is to highlight that balanced design of delivering, a solution that's customer-centric, customer-focused, but also providing what management needs to support kind of the license and the software management activities, behind the curtain, and the accounting aspects of it. So, I mean, we've added our own kind of components to it. It's workflow that we've created, tables we've created to manage the distribution methods and the payment methods, as well as some of the UI components for interacting with requesting something in the store. But there are various aspects that are native ServiceNow, like the use of a user entitlements is a standard feature of ServiceNow that we're leveraging as part of that workflow. We've just kind of put wrappers around some of those things to make it easier to manage, through the workflow activity steps.
Yeah, there isn't any non-native ServiceNow code involved. but it's a matter of taking what's there and solving the problems in a more complete way, a lot of times. And, you know, that's that customer-centric focus.
Okay, great, thanks. Real quickly, I do want to remind everyone you will receive a copy of the webinar recording and the slides no later than Monday. You'll get that from me, and if you have any follow-up questions or want to request any of the content that Don mentioned earlier, you can always email me at marketing@evergreensys.com. And kind of the last call for questions here, so please send them in. Jeff, I do have another one for you. Does the collaboration with the fulfiller on the incident status screen assume live bodies are actively working on incidents?
No, I mean, I think that would, you know, I think most companies aren't just sitting there waiting for people to interact with them. You know, so it's not expected that, you know, a self-service consumer will get, you know, immediate updates and resolution of their incidents within minutes, nor be able to maybe actively pass messages back and forth in real time with the assigned individual. Obviously, from a customer perspective, that would be a great if that were the reality. But more, you know, more likely, it's going to be, you know, updates that occur over time, and you know, and coming back to that status page to see that trail of activities and messages. And you know, we certainly use things when you're offline. We would use SMS messages, email notifications, or other ways to push alerts to the end user if they're not online interacting with those pages.
Yeah, most organizations are not staffed to that degree of interactivity. I mean, it would be quite expensive. Now, you do see it in customer-facing activity a lot of times because that's revenue generating, but you don't always see it in support.
And I think we're on our last question. No, I got two more. Jeff, does this tool set work with ServiceNow Express as well?
Sadly, no. I mean, ServiceNow Express doesn't have the open toolkit for us to drop in application code like we're kind of demonstrating today, nor does it expose things like the workflow editor for use. So sadly, no. A lot of what I showed today is not something we can inject into a ServiceNow Express environment because it's basically just not given the controls to do so.
Okay, great. And Jeff, another one for you. In the demo, HR and IT services were commingled in one portal. Is that the best practice?
I mean, I would say it's a best practice to provide a solution that's meaningful and intuitive to the customer, such that, you know, if the customer doesn't see IT and HR as really completely different entities that should be, I would say probably they should cohabitate in the same portal. You know, you might find that in some cases the presentation of the service information might differ if you're looking at something that's HR related or shared service related from that of IT. Or we might also be linking, we might be showing them links to other portals, you know, an HR portal that has benefit information and so forth. But I mean, the goal should be to try to provide a complete experience, and you know, I would lean towards creating more of a single place to go for service information than relying on the consumer to know that, you know, in one place for one place they go for one service provider information, whereas another they go someplace else.
Well, and you know, to kind of expand on that, search will take you to the appropriate destination as well. You know, as a consumer, the taxonomy it's one service taxonomy. There's just one taxonomy, but it is fractally viewed, and the nature of what's in a particular area is where the customer would expect to find things. So there is a service catalog taxonomy area for HR, and what's there is based on what the customer should expect to find. Whoever that customer is or consumer of that information, what would they expect to see there? And it can be provided by multiple providers. It's not owned by HR. It's owned by the customers that are consuming that functionality, whatever it is. So you could have IT training showing up as part of training overall in HR, but it also might be in the service catalog area of IT customer-facing services. It could be presented both places. It wouldn't matter. So it's driven by the customer. And when you see that list of tasks that Jeff showed, it actually, we think it's easy to change it, but we think it makes sense to show the compound tasks, because if I'm an employee I want to see all my task status in one place. That is valuable to me for the portal, and I can interact with it very quickly, so it makes the portal very sticky then. And I don't have enough tasks usually. It's not 1,000 things that I can't see all task types in one place. Right, so that's a real nice factor for driving that becoming the home page for the employee to interact with the corporate shared services.
Great, thanks, Don. Quick review here. I think I got all your questions again. If I did miss any, oh, now I got a last minute one here. Is it possible to include Google Translator in ServiceNow for global customers that would like to have searchable information or articles translated into a preferred language?
I mean, certainly yes. I mean, ServiceNow does have multi-language support, but that would, ServiceNow does not translate on the fly, but rather you would have basically, a Spanish language pack, which means all the labels and content could be written both in Spanish as well as in English. And so that if someone's logged in and they're registered as a Spanish user, they would see the Spanish, basically, versions of that content and or labels and messages. We have used things like Google Translator in the past to do more on-the-fly translations of content if need be, so that's certainly an option. There are open web services for that tool.
That might be a cool application, Jeff, for global knowledge kind of search capability, or global, community of interest search, right? Working outside, it could be inside an organization or outside an organization. Now, that's an interesting idea.
It is. I mean, the thing you have to be cautious of a little bit with those translator tools is that they're not always an exact science. How something's phrased and written in one language may not match how it should be phrased and written in another language.
Right.
But there's places where tying those automatic translations might make sense to present information, that was originally entered in English that doesn't have a already, say Spanish version of it determined or relevant, that you might use the translator to provide. Here's the Spanish version of that. And keep in mind, browsers do a lot of this too. I mean, you can go, if it detects, a different language on the site, it will ask you to translate some of that content as well. So there are some options with the itself to do some of those.
Okay, great, thanks guys. Well, I think that is the end of our questions. Again, if I missed any or you want to request any of the documents that Don mentioned, email me at marketing@evergreensys.com. Thanks everyone, and have a great weekend. Take care.